Hi everyone, and welcome to our channel. If you're new here, don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story that moves your heart or opens your mind. Now sit back, relax, and let's begin. Seattle, February. The sky was gray and heavy with misty rain. Emily Carter took a deep breath, pulled her coat tightly around her, and walked quickly into the tall office building where she had worked for nearly 7 years. Every step echoed in the brightly lit hallway. She was always the first to arrive. Always. She had joined Syntrex Solutions, a mid-sized tech company, straight out of college. Born to a working-class family in Oregon, Emily knew the value of opportunity. Her parents were factory workers, people who spent their lives standing at machines and saving every penny so that Emily could earn a college degree. At first, Emily was just an administrative assistant. Unremarkable, quiet. But she was relentless. She took accounting courses, learned to write project reports, mastered scheduling and time management. She never turned down extra work. Slowly, she was promoted to internal project coordinator, a demanding role that required focus, tact, and stamina. Mark Dalton, her manager, once told her something she'd never forget. "You don't shine like the loud ones, Emily. But when the dust settles, it's your hand that holds things together." She had smiled, feeling appreciated. She never imagined that the same man would later be the one to push her out. Emily was never the life of the party at company events. She didn't go to after-hours drinks or play office politics. Her version of success was quieter, buying a modest condo with her own money, having a stable job, and, most recently, starting a family with her kind, steady husband, Alex. They'd married 2 years ago. The news of her pregnancy came one cold December night while she was working on a report with a cup of ginger tea beside her. 2 pink lines. She hugged Alex and cried. It was everything they had hoped for. But things began to shift. Even in her first trimester, Emily's performance remained solid, but her body began to slow. She was fatigued, nauseous, restless at night. She still arrived early and stayed late, but instead of bounding up the stairs, she walked more slowly. Instead of a 10-minute lunch break, she started needing a full 30 minutes to keep her stomach from rebelling. She began to hear whispers behind her back. "She's slowing down. Should we bring in a temp? Hope she doesn't go on bed rest too soon." Mark, once casually warm, became distant. He interrupted her in meetings, reassigned tasks she normally handled. She felt her grip on the role slipping, and she didn't know why. When she asked to leave 30 minutes early for a prenatal checkup, Mark sighed, not rudely, but with a silent weight that crushed her spirit. Then came that fateful Monday morning. Emily was organizing documents when she received the email. "Meet me in my office." "Mark." She knocked gently. Mark didn't look up. He motioned to the chair. A brown envelope sat on the desk. No coffee mug. No small talk. "Emily, we've been reviewing team performance, and it's become clear that your current pace isn't compatible with the upcoming demands." She blinked. "What do you mean?" Mark slid the envelope toward her. "This is your formal termination letter. Effective today." Emily couldn't speak. Her ears rang. Her throat tightened. "But I've never been warned. I just finished the weekly report and—" Mark shook his head. "It's not personal. It's about productivity." She stood, clutching the envelope, and walked out of the office. Her footsteps echoed down the hall like something breaking. At home, Emily collapsed on the living room floor. She didn't cry because of the job. She cried because she felt betrayed. 7 years of dedication, late nights, skipped vacations, endless effort, meant nothing now that she was pregnant. Alex knelt beside her and took her hand. "We'll get through this. You're not alone." She nodded quietly, but inside, something had been extinguished and something new, quiet but powerful, had begun to stir. By the end of the chapter, Emily sat at her small desk in the corner of the apartment, laptop open. She searched. Pregnancy Discrimination Act. Wrongful termination lawyer. Employee rights while pregnant. She didn't know where the road ahead would lead. But for the first time in years, Emily wasn't just trying to keep things together. She was ready to rebuild from the ground up, and this time, no one would push her aside so easily. The next morning, Emily Carter woke up not to an alarm, but to silence. No clattering keys, no rush to beat traffic. Just the sound of wind brushing against her apartment windows. It should have felt freeing. Instead, she felt like a balloon that had lost its tether, drifting directionless. Alex made her a warm breakfast, even though she barely touched it. He tried to smile as if things were normal, but both of them knew everything had changed. She wasn't just jobless. She was hurt, deeply, silently, and completely. That afternoon, she received a call from her friend Lena Myers. "I heard," Lena said gently. "Mark's a snake. Always has been." Emily hadn't even told her yet. The news had traveled fast. Lena used to work in the same department, but had left a year earlier to open a small bookstore cafe downtown called Paper and Bloom. It was a cozy space full of vintage armchairs, art prints, and the smell of cinnamon tea. "Come by," Lena said. "No pressure, just come." The bookstore became her haven. At first, Emily just visited. She'd browse the shelves slowly, fingers grazing spines, avoiding eye contact with customers. Lena never rushed her. One afternoon, as they organized a shipment of books, Lena asked, "Want to help out a bit?" "Just at the register. Only if you feel up to it." It wasn't much, and the pay barely covered gas. But Emily nodded. It gave her purpose, a place to go, a reminder that she still had value. Each day, she did a little more, updating the inventory, designing new display tables, running the social media page. Customers began to recognize her, even asked for her recommendations. "You've got a calm energy," one woman told her. "Makes the store feel warmer." Emily smiled at that. It had been a long time since anyone saw her as more than a number on a spreadsheet. Meanwhile, Syntrex Solutions was unraveling. Mark Dalton had underestimated how much Emily held things together. Her replacement, an eager but inexperienced assistant, had missed 2 deadlines in the first week. A major client presentation had to be rescheduled because the files were mismanaged. The team was frustrated. Slack messages filled with questions, emails unanswered, meetings disorganized. On Thursday, a heated argument broke out during a staff meeting. One employee muttered just loud enough. None of this happened when Emily was here. Mark's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond. He knew it was true. Back at the bookstore, Emily was rebuilding in more ways than one. Each night, she continued her research on labor law, on pregnancy rights, on wrongful termination. She found a local advocacy group called Balance for Mothers and signed up for their weekly Zoom meetings. At first, she just listened, heart pounding as women from across the country shared similar stories. "They treated me like a liability the second I showed," one woman said. "I was laid off while in labor," another shared. "My role was eliminated." Funny how that worked. Emily began to speak too, quietly at first, then more firmly. She realized her story wasn't just hers. It was part of something much larger. One night, she received a private message during the meeting from a woman named Rachel. "Hi, Emily. I used to work with Mark. I'm his ex-wife. I think you should know something." Emily blinked at the screen. "He used to talk about you. He said you reminded him of what I lost. I had a miscarriage 2 years before our divorce. I think your pregnancy triggered something in him. Not that it excuses anything, but I thought you deserved the truth." Emily's hand trembled on a mouse. She didn't know what to feel: pity, rage, sadness. But one thing became clear. Mark's actions weren't just about performance. They were about control. Friday morning, Emily received an unexpected call. It was from the company's HR director. "Hi, Emily. This is Dana from Syntrex. Mark asked me to reach out. He wants to speak with you. Said it was urgent." Emily laughed bitterly. "He fired me 4 days ago." "I know. I'm just a messenger," Dana said quietly. "But between us, I think he regrets it. The department's in chaos." Emily didn't answer. She hung up, stared at the phone for a long time, then turned back to the cash register where a young girl was buying a journal. Saturday night arrived with heavy clouds and a stillness that felt too thick for spring. Emily sat by the window, a journal resting in her lap. The bookstore had closed early for inventory, and she finally had time to sit with herself. Her baby kicked softly, a flutter like a reminder. "I'm here too." She placed her hand on her belly and smiled, but the joy was wrapped in a strange sadness. She hadn't told her parents yet about the termination. They would worry. Her father would want to drive up to Seattle to have a word with that boss of yours. And her mother would ask if this was because she hadn't gone into teaching like they wanted. But Emily didn't need advice. She needed clarity. And then came the knock. She froze. It was late. Too late for neighbors. She rose, careful with her balance, and looked through the peephole. Mark Dalton, not in his usual tailored suit, but a wrinkled shirt and a jacket that looked slept in, hair unkempt, jaw covered in stubble, his eyes tired red, desperate. Emily took a long breath and opened the door, just a crack. "You came to the wrong house, Mark." He held up a hand, palms open. "I'm not here to beg. I need to explain." "You already did. You're not fast enough. Remember?" "Please," he said, voice breaking. 5 minutes. Emily didn't move, but she didn't close the door either. He took it as permission. She didn't invite him in. They stood at the threshold, one foot in the past, one in the present. Mark looked around as if trying to place her outside the context of fluorescent lights and boardrooms. "I was wrong," he said, "and not just about firing you." She said nothing. He continued, "You remind me of someone. My ex-wife, Rachel. She was pregnant once. We lost the baby. I thought we had moved on, but I didn't. I didn't deal with it. I buried it in work. When I saw you slowing down, being human, I panicked, not because of your performance, but because you made me remember everything I tried to forget." Emily's chest tightened. "So you punish me for something I never did?" Mark's voice dropped. "Yes, and I've regretted it every day since." A long silence followed. The only sound was the low hum of traffic and a dog barking down the block. "I was just a woman doing her job," Emily finally said. "I was loyal. I was tired. I was scared. And I gave everything I had, every hour, every weekend. You took that and decided it wasn't enough. And now you're here because your team's in chaos." Mark didn't deny it. "Yes." Emily stepped outside now, letting the door close gently behind her. She stood just inches away from him, not in intimidation, but in truth. "Why didn't you say all this before?" "I didn't know how. Or maybe I thought I didn't have to. I was wrong." She studied him. "You thought I'd say yes." He nodded. "I hope, because you're used to people needing you more than you need them." That struck him like a slap. His eyes watered. "Maybe that's true." Emily's voice softened. "I used to admire you, Mark. You were sharp, efficient, even kind. But kindness isn't about letting people work until they break. It's about seeing them when they do." Mark looked down, unable to meet her eyes. "I don't deserve your forgiveness," he said. "No," Emily agreed. "But you can do better. For the next Emily who walks into your office." He looked up. "There's not going to be another you. Then treat every woman like she might be." She turned, placing her hand on the door handle. "I'm not coming back. Not to Centrex. But I'm not disappearing either." "What does that mean?" he asked. She gave him a small smile. "You'll see." And with that, she closed the door. Back inside, Emily stood in the quiet. Her hands trembled, but not with fear, with release. Something had shifted. The confrontation didn't fix the past. It didn't undo the pain, but gave her something more powerful than an apology. A clean break. She sat at her laptop and pulled up her notes. Her legal consultation was scheduled for Tuesday. But tonight, she had another plan. She opened a blank document, typed one word at the top, Project Bloom. Below it, she began outlining a concept, a support network for pregnant professionals, complete with legal resources, counseling referrals, workplace education tools. Not just an organization, a movement. The next morning, her phone buzzed. It was Lena. "You okay? He came by the store yesterday, asking about you." Emily replied. "He found me. We talked. It's over." He looked destroyed. Emily smiled slightly. "Good. I hope he rebuilds himself right." That week, Emily met with a civil rights lawyer. Her case was strong. There was no documentation of poor performance. No verbal warnings. Her termination was swift, baseless, and, most importantly, timed exactly with her pregnancy announcement. The lawyer was confident. "We could take this public," she said, "and we will. But I sense you're after more than a lawsuit." Emily nodded. "I want this to mean something." That night, as she stood in the bookstore's reading nook, a woman approached her. "Are you the one who used to work at Centrex?" I am, Emily said, bracing. I heard what happened. I just wanted to say, thank you. You made us feel less alone. Emily's eyes welled. She hadn't expected to be heard so soon. But the ripple had begun. Outside, Mark sat alone in his office. The lights flickered. His inbox overflowed. The assistant had quit. 2 clients had escalated concerns. But the real ache wasn't in his workload. It was in the silence. He looked at the empty chair where Emily used to sit during briefings. He remembered how she never interrupted, how she always had the right file, how she remembered people's birthdays, favorite snacks, meeting times. She was never too slow. She was thoughtful. And now she was gone. He opened his browser, typed, pregnancy discrimination lawsuits, then deleted it. He typed again, how to be a better leader. This time he hit enter. The auditorium buzzed with quiet anticipation. It was the annual Women in Tech Leadership Conference in Seattle, a place Emily Carter had once dreamed of attending, not as a guest, but as a speaker. Now, the dream was happening. Except the path here hadn't come through promotions or awards. It had come through pain, loss, and a door slammed shut in her face. Emily stood behind the heavy curtain backstage, adjusting her blouse over her now clearly visible baby bump. Lena stood beside her, squeezing her hand. You've got this, she whispered. They're not ready for you. But they should be. Emily smiled, her stomach fluttering with a mix of nerves and pride. When her name was announced, she stepped forward into the warm spotlight. Her voice was steady. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 32 years old. I'm a project coordinator, a mother-to-be, and until recently, I believed that working hard was enough. The room fell into silence. I gave 7 years to a company. I never called in sick. I never missed a deadline. But the moment I slowed down, just a little, to grow another life inside me, I was told I wasn't a good fit. That my pace wasn't compatible. She paused, letting the words sink in. I was fired. No warning. No discussion. Just discarded like a broken tool. Murmurs rippled through the audience. Some shook their heads. Others clenched their jaws. But I'm not here today to name and shame a company, Emily continued. I'm here because I know I'm not alone. Too many women are asked to choose between motherhood and career, between health and productivity, between dignity and silence. Applause broke out, slow at first, then stronger. Today, I choose my voice, and I invite every woman in this room to do the same. The standing ovation that followed wasn't for her pain, it was for her power. And sitting at the back of the room, barely visible in the shadows, was Mark Dalton. He hadn't planned to come, but after seeing her story circulating online, after receiving an email from the HR director titled, "Please read urgently," curiosity, or guilt, drew him there. He hadn't expected the impact. He hadn't expected her to be so composed. He had come thinking he might hear bitterness, perhaps an attack. But what he heard instead was conviction, and it broke something in him. When the crowd dispersed, he slipped out quietly, unseen. Back at the bookstore, Emily returned to find a package on the front counter. No name, just a manila envelope with "For Emily" written in small, neat handwriting. Inside was a letter. Emily, you were right. About all of it. I spent years thinking leadership was about results. That feelings were a distraction. That numbers told the whole story. But numbers never told me when someone was close to breaking. You did. I'm stepping down from my role. I recommended they bring in someone better, someone who understands people. And I hope someday I can become one of those people too. Thank you for teaching me what strength looks like. Mark. Emily sat in silence for a long time. She didn't cry. She didn't smile. She just closed her eyes and let the quiet speak for her. The lawsuit proceeded. Emily wasn't seeking revenge, but she wanted accountability. Her legal team negotiated a private settlement with Cintrex, enough for her to start Project Bloom full-time, and ensure company policy was amended to include explicit protections for pregnant employees. She refused a non-disclosure agreement. I won't take silence as a prize, she told them. When the final agreement was signed, her lawyer said, "You just made it safer for hundreds of women who'll never know your name." Emily replied softly, "That's enough for me." In the weeks that followed, emails poured into the inbox of Project Bloom. Stories, questions, offers to help. Pregnant students, nurses, tech workers, single mothers, each with a voice cracking through the silence. Emily didn't try to answer them all, but she read every one. She created a team. She built something real. Not because she wanted to be the face of a movement, but because she had once sat alone on the floor, jobless and terrified, and promised herself no other woman should feel that way again. One afternoon, while visiting Lena's bookstore for a final shift before maternity leave, Emily was handed a business card from a young woman in a blazer. "I work at the governor's office. They've been following your story. Would you consider joining a new state advisory board on workplace protections?" Emily blinked. "I'm just a former project coordinator." The woman smiled. "Not anymore." Mark, meanwhile, sat alone in his now empty condo. He had resigned officially 2 weeks earlier. His phone barely rang. The silence that followed wasn't comforting, it was earned. He thought about Rachel, about the baby they had lost, about the pain he'd buried, how that pain had made him cold, guarded, cruel. He finally saw it clearly. Leadership without empathy was nothing more than a dictatorship of metrics. One evening, he wrote to Rachel, "I finally dealt with it. I hurt someone else the way I never got to process what we went through. I'm sorry for back then. And for now." Rachel wrote back the next morning. "I heard her speak. She's extraordinary. You're lucky she forgave you the way she did, even if she didn't say the words." Emily stood by her window one evening, watching the city lights shimmer through early summer fog. Her hand rested on her stomach, now full and heavy with life. Alex came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her. "Do you regret leaving?" She thought for a moment. "I regret ever thinking I wasn't enough." They stood in silence, the kind that no longer felt empty, but earned. At the next Women in Tech event, Emily was no longer a guest speaker. She was the keynote. And this time, the door wasn't one she had to knock on. It was already wide open. Rain tapped lightly against the glass as Emily Carter stood in the nursery, folding a set of tiny yellow onesies. The walls were painted a soft sage green. A mobile of stars and clouds hung above the crib, gently turning in the breeze of the ceiling fan. The past months had passed in a blur. Lawyers, interviews, panel discussions, meetings with state officials. Project Bloom had grown beyond her apartment in the back corner of Lena's bookstore. It now occupied a real office, staffed by 4 women from different industries who had once experienced what Emily did, and who had chosen to fight back. But tonight, there were no speaking engagements, no emails to return, only soft baby clothes and the feeling that something extraordinary was coming. Her due date was in 3 days. Alex sat on the couch in the next room, flipping through a parenting book with furrowed brows. "Do you think we should know how to swaddle already?" Emily laughed gently. "We'll figure it out." He came over, wrapping his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "You changed everything, Em. You know that." She leaned her head back against his. "I didn't set out to. I just couldn't let it end the way it did." "It didn't end," Alex whispered. "It became something else." The next morning, she went into labor. It was slow, steady, and strangely calm. She and Alex drove to the birthing center just after sunrise. She labored for hours, surrounded by a team she had personally chosen, midwives who treated her like a human, not a task. At 4:42 p.m., their daughter was born. Emily held her against her chest, tears streaming freely. "Welcome to a better world," she whispered. "One we're still building." They named her June for new beginnings. 2 weeks later, Project Bloom received a national award for workplace advocacy. Emily wasn't there to accept it. She sent a video message instead. "I'm sitting here holding my daughter, and I want her to grow up in a world where women don't have to choose between being valued and being visible. Where slow doesn't mean weak. Where rest doesn't mean replaceable. Where carrying life never means carrying shame. We're not asking for special treatment, just fairness, humanity, respect. Let's keep that door open, not just for us, but for everyone who's coming after." Mark watched the video alone in a quiet office. He was now working part-time for a nonprofit that helped former executives transition into mentorship roles with ethical leadership values. He never reached out again. He knew Emily had given him something better than forgiveness, accountability. He had been invited to the award event. He declined. Instead, he wrote her one final letter. Dear Emily, I saw June's photo. She's beautiful. You're building something that will outlive both of us. I hope someday she knows what you stood for. I hope someday we all do. He never sent it. He just placed it on the windowsill of his new apartment and watched the sun rise through the glass. Back at home, Emily rocked June to sleep. The house was quiet again, not the silence of despair, but of peace. Her phone buzzed. Another message from a woman she'd never met. I just filed my first HR complaint. I was terrified, but then I thought of you. Thank you. Emily closed her eyes. She hadn't gone back to the door that shut on her. She had opened a window, and through it the light poured in.